The desert was too quiet that morning. The wind had died, the sand was still, and even the buzz of insects seemed absent. When I lifted my shovel, I expected to hear the familiar scrape of earth, but instead I felt something ring through the ground, a sharp metallic note that did not belong in soil. It was as if I had struck the edge of a bell buried deep below. I froze. The workers around me paused as well, looking at one another. Emily Carter, my graduate assistant, knelt a few feet away, brushing dirt from her hands. She tilted her head and frowned. "Professor Harlow," she said softly. "What was that?" I pushed the shovel again, slower this time, peeling away the dust. The sound returned, clear and cold, echoing up into the air. My pulse quickened. We dug for hours. The desert sun climbed high, but none of us spoke much. Every scrape of metal drew the shape into sharper focus, until finally the outline of a chest revealed itself. It was larger than I expected, 3 feet long, bound in chains so blackened with age they looked like shadows. Each link was etched with tiny symbols, not quite Latin, not quite Greek, jagged in a way that made my eyes ache if I stared too long. The wood beneath the chains was dark, slick with some residue that had not dried despite the centuries. The smell rose sharp and metallic, as if blood had soaked the timber long ago and refused to leave. Emily stepped closer. She was young, bright, eager to impress, but when she saw the chest, her breath caught in her throat. "It looks wrong," she whispered. I forced a smile I did not feel. "It looks old. That is what matters." Her eyes flicked to mine. "No, Robert, it feels wrong." I ignored her. My hands brushed across the front plate. It was silver, tarnished, but the words carved there were still clear, the edges deep as though someone had etched them with fury. "Do not open the book. Do not read what is written inside." That was all. No scripture, no blessing, no signature. Just the command. The words pressed into me like a weight. For a moment I felt the sun dim, as if the desert sky had leaned closer. Emily read them too, her lips trembling over each syllable. She pulled back at once. "That's enough. We should not touch this." Her voice shook with genuine fear, but I was already thinking ahead. What lay inside could change my career. Scholars whispered of the forbidden archives in Rome, of texts burned, hidden, denied. If this was what I suspected, then we had uncovered something the Vatican itself had buried. I could not turn away. "It is only superstition," I said, though my throat was dry. "Warnings like this are meant to scare the uneducated. We will study it properly." Emily shook her head, but the others waited for my order. None dared speak against me. My ambition outweighed their silence. I fetched a hammer and struck the lock. The sound rang like thunder across the site. The chain links snapped apart with a force that made my palms sting. The desert wind died completely. Even the dust hung in the air, unmoving. We lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in velvet that had decayed into threads, lay the book. It was pale, almost white, the leather cracked but strangely supple. The surface felt warm when I touched it, like skin flushed with fever. The clasp was corroded, easy to break. The weight in my hands was greater than it should have been, as if the book carried not only paper, but something else. Emily backed away, shaking her head violently. "Robert, stop! You read the plate. Do not do this." I stared at the cover. My name would be remembered. I had found what others had only guessed. That thought alone drowned her voice. I opened it. The first page spread before me. Black ink sharp against yellowed parchment. The words were in Latin, archaic but legible. I traced them silently, line by line, unable to look away. Then the letters shifted. The ink moved like worms under the surface, writhing, twisting, reforming into shapes I did not know. They bled together, pulsing like wounds. A voice rose from the page. "Robert." I jerked my head up, but no one had spoken. The workers had backed away. Emily stood frozen, her eyes wide, her mouth open. The voice came again, not from the desert, from the book, from the margins of the page. Robert. It was soft, almost tender, but it pressed against my skull like hands closing around my head. Emily screamed. She lunged forward, slammed the book shut with both hands. The sound was like a coffin lid closing. The ground vibrated beneath us. Silence followed, heavy, suffocating. We said nothing. My heart pounded so loudly I thought the others could hear it. The air smelled of iron, thick and sharp. That night, the desert trembled. We were camped near the ruins of the chapel. The wind rose without warning, whipping the tents. I heard shouts, then screams. Villagers from the nearby town had gathered inside the chapel for evening prayer. But something happened. I ran with Emily to the doorway, and the sight inside is burned into me forever. Dozens of people clawed at their own faces, gouging eyes, tearing skin. Some ripped pages from hymnals and shoved them into their mouths until they choked. Others screamed prayers backward, each syllable mangled until their throats tore open. Blood smeared across the walls in frantic strokes, shapes that resembled the symbols carved into the chain. Children shrieked and collapsed. Old men laughed until their jaws broke. Women tore their rosaries and strangled themselves with the beads. I could not move. My body locked, my eyes wide. One man stood in the center, swaying. His eyes were white, his lips cracked. He turned to me instantly as though he had been waiting. "You," he whispered, then louder. "You, keeper of the book." Emily clutched my arm. I could not breathe. The man grinned, blood running from his teeth. "Give me your blood," he rasped. And before anyone could stop him, he slammed his head against the stone wall. Once, twice, again, until bone split and blood sprayed. He fell, twitching, and lay still. Screams filled the chapel. My team fled into the desert, their shouts lost in the storm. Emily pulled me back, her nails digging into my arm, but I could not look away. The corpse still grinned. Even with his skull caved in, his lips were fixed, teeth bared, as though the words were still on his tongue. "Keeper of the book, give me your blood." I didn't sleep that night. I sat alone outside my tent, the book heavy in my lap. The desert stretched silent around me, but each shift of the wind carried it, my name, whispered again and again from pages I had never finished reading. They arrived on the third morning, and the desert seemed to know they were coming. The wind died before dawn, leaving the air heavy, unmoving, as though the very earth was bracing itself. I had not slept. I sat outside my tent with the book at my feet, staring at the pale leather cover as the horizon glowed faint with sunlight. My mind replayed the screams from the chapel, the white eyes, the blood, the man who had called me keeper and demanded my blood. The sound of engines carried across the sand. I turned and saw two black vehicles cresting the ridge, their shapes sharp against the rising sun. Dust curled behind them, but fell quickly, as though the air itself refused to disturb their passage. The cars rolled to a stop near the ruins. Doors opened and the men stepped out. Father Thomas Brennan was the first. He was tall but stooped, his shoulders bent under a weight that seemed older than his years. His hair was thin, silver against the sun, his face lined deep, carved with fatigue and something harder, something close to dread. His eyes were the most striking, gray, watchful, sharp even in their exhaustion. They swept over the ruins, the camp, and then fixed on me. He walked forward slowly, deliberately, each step measured. He extended a hand. His grip was firm but cold. And when his skin touched mine, I felt judgment, as though I were already weighed and found wanting. Behind him came brother Caleb Foster. He was younger, perhaps in his mid-30s, but his presence was heavier, more aggressive. He was broad-shouldered, his jaw square, his expression carved into suspicion. His eyes did not shift or wander. They locked on me and did not leave. Where Brennan seemed weary, Caleb radiated zeal, a harsh certainty that burned through the air between us. They said little at first. They did not ask about the ruins or the excavation or the artifacts. Their eyes went immediately to the chest and the book lying within it. Brennan crossed himself. Caleb spat into the sand. "You should not have touched it," Brennan said quietly. His voice was soft but heavy, carrying pity and condemnation in equal measure. Caleb's words came sharp, his tone edged like a blade. "You have unleashed what was buried. You are the reason blood was spilled in that chapel. You are the reason men and women screamed themselves into death." Emily stepped forward quickly, her face pale but her voice steady. "He did not know," she said. "None of us knew what it was. The warning was vague. He is not a monster." Caleb turned on her with a glare so sharp I thought she would step back, but she stood her ground. His jaw clenched. Ignorance is no shield. The warning was clear. He read it anyway. He pointed at me, his fingers stiff, shaking with fury. "He is the keeper now. His blood is the key." The phrase churned my stomach. Keeper. I had heard it from the dying man in the chapel, from the whispers that stalked me in the desert wind, and now from the mouth of a Vatican brother. Brennan raised a hand, silencing Caleb. He looked at me with eyes that seemed both tired and deeply sad. "We will not waste time in argument. The facts are plain. You opened what was sealed. The bond is made. Now we must prevent it from spreading further." I swallowed. My throat was dry. "What is it?" I asked. "What is inside the book?" For a long time, Brennan said nothing. His gaze fell to the ground, as though he feared even to look at me while speaking. Finally he whispered, "It is not a book. It is a prison. The words inside were never meant to be read. They are chains carved in language, forged to bind what should never walk this earth. And now you have broken them." Emily's voice trembled. "A demon." Brennan flinched as though the word itself struck him, but he did not deny it. Caleb leaned close, his voice low but fierce. "And that demon hungers for his blood. That is how it escapes. That is how it spreads beyond these ruins, beyond this desert, into the world." The silence that followed pressed against us like a physical weight. The broken windows of the chapel rattled in the still air, and in that silence I thought I heard it again. My name, faint, insistent, curling through the emptiness like smoke. That night they insisted we move the book into the old mission hall. We carried it carefully, Brennan murmuring prayers under his breath, Caleb gripping his dagger as though expecting the book to leap from my arms. We set it on the stone altar, the silver chains lying broken around it. The pale leather gleamed faintly in the lantern light. Brennan stepped forward, his hands trembling. "We will try to destroy it," he said, but his voice carried no confidence. They poured oil across the cover, thick and dark. Brennan whispered a blessing. Caleb struck a torch and thrust it forward. Flames roared up, heat forcing us back, the fire climbing high into the rafters. For a moment I dared to hope. But the book did not burn. The fire curled around it like water around stone. Leaving the pale leather untouched, Caleb snarled. He pulled the dagger from his belt. Its blade was silver, etched with scripture that glimmered in the firelight. He lifted it high and drove it down into the center of the book. The sound was not paper tearing, it was flesh. The blade sank deep, and at first I thought he had succeeded. But then blood welled up, thick and red, spilling along the dagger, dripping to the floor. The smell filled the hall, sharp, metallic, suffocating. Emily screamed, her voice high and raw. Brennan staggered back, his face white with horror. Caleb wrenched the dagger free, and blood sprayed across his robes, spattering the floor, running into the cracks of the stone. The book shuddered violently. Its pages turned on their own, whipping back and forth as though caught in a storm. The ink bled, letters running, sliding, twisting into shapes that looked almost human. Faces seemed to form in the stains, mouths open in silent screams. And then the voice came. "Robert!" It was not a whisper anymore. It was a chorus, layered and vast, male and female, young and old, all calling my name in unison. The sound struck me like a hammer. My knees buckled. I clutched the altar to keep from collapsing. The voice rose again, louder, reverberating through the hall. "Give me your blood, and I will be free." The words pounded through my skull. My vision blurred. Images burned into my mind, chains snapping, shadows spilling across the earth, cities drowning in darkness. I saw myself kneeling, bleeding, the book drinking every drop. "No," I gasped. My voice shook. "No!" Emily grabbed my arm. "Do not listen. Do not answer," she pleaded. Her nails dug into my sleeve, her eyes desperate. But Caleb's eyes gleamed with fanatic fire. "It is already inside him. Better to end him now than let it take root." He raised the dagger again, turning toward me. Brennan lunged and caught his wrist. "No! If he dies, the book opens fully. His death is not the key. His blood willingly given is." The two men glared at each other, one with rage, the other with terror. The dagger trembled between them. I stood frozen, the voices pounding behind my eyes, the book shuddering before me, Emily gripping my arm as though she could hold me in place by force of will. Later, long after the fire had died, long after Brennan and Caleb had retreated into opposite corners of the camp, I sat alone with the book. Emily refused to leave me, sitting a few feet away, silent, her face pale, her eyes wide with sleepless fear. The cover seemed to pulse faintly in the lantern light, as though veins beat beneath the leather. I touched it once, and it felt warm, almost fevered. My reflection wavered on the silver clasp. I told myself I would not open it again. I told myself I had learned, but the desert wind shifted. The air pressed heavy against my ears, and I heard it, my name, soft, patient, tender. Robert. It came from the margins of my mind, curling inside my thoughts. It did not demand this time. It waited. It lingered. It promised. And I knew, with a dread that sank into my bones, that this was only the beginning. The first night after the failed attempt to destroy the book was worse than anything before. I lay in my tent, staring at the ceiling of canvas, listening to the silence outside. It was not the silence of rest. It was the silence of something waiting. The desert no longer moved. Even the insects had gone. My chest rose and fell too quickly, as though the air itself had thinned. I turned on my side, closed my eyes, tried to will myself into sleep. That was when I heard it. "Robert." The voice was not outside. It was not in the tent. It was inside my head, curling through my thoughts like smoke. I tried to block it out, pressed my hands against my ears, but it did not help. The whisper was not sound. It was something deeper. The canvas wall of the tent shifted. For a moment I thought it was the wind, but then I realized the night was perfectly still. The shadow that moved across the wall did not match the flame of the lantern. I looked down. My shadow was wrong. It lagged a second behind me, moving after I did. I lifted my hand. My shadow lifted a moment later. My heart clenched tight. I stood, and the shadow stood too, but out of rhythm, delayed as though obeying another master. I staggered back. Emily pushed into the tent, her face pale, her eyes wide. She had heard me gasp. "Robert? What is it?" she whispered. I pointed at the floor. "Look." She looked, her face drained of color. The shadow on the ground did not match my stance. It hunched, its head bent, its arms too long. For a moment, its fingers curled into claws. Then it straightened again, pretending to mimic me. Emily grabbed my arm. "You have to get away from it. You have to step into the light." I stepped into the lantern glow, and the shadow shrank, pressed close, still twitching, still a fraction of a second behind. My skin crawled. The next morning, Brennan came to me. He looked worse than before. dark circles beneath his eyes, his hands trembling as though age had caught him in a single night. "You are marked," he said. "The book has claimed you. It is why the shadow bends. It is why you hear the voice. It will not stop now, not until you give it what it wants." Caleb stood behind him, arms crossed, his eyes fixed on me with scorn. "I told you, he is the key, he is the doorway. If we cut him down, the book will be sealed again." Brennan shook his head sharply. "No. If he dies wrongly, the book will open fully. The demon will walk free. Do you understand? His blood must not be spilled in violence." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Then he must be locked away. We cannot risk him walking among us while it speaks inside his head." I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but the truth was, I felt it too. I felt it gnawing, pushing, whispering with every breath. I felt my own name carved inside my skull. That afternoon, Emily called me to the mission hall. She was standing by the altar, her hands shaking. "Robert," she said, her voice faint, "you have to see this." The book lay open on the altar. I had not touched it since the night of blood. Yet the pages were spread, the ink alive. Along the margin, words had appeared, written in fresh crimson strokes. It was my name. Over and over, line after line, filling the margins, the letters dripping as though the page itself was bleeding me out. Robert, Robert, Robert. I stepped closer, and the letters seemed to pulse. My chest tightened, my vision blurred. Emily seized my arm. "Do not read it aloud, promise me. Do not let it hear your voice." I nodded, though my lips had already started to shape the first syllable. The urge to speak was overwhelming, like an itch in my throat, a compulsion to finish what the page had begun. Caleb entered then, his boots loud against the stone. He saw the writing and spat. "It calls for him. It demands him. How much longer will you deny it, Father? How much longer will you let him drag us toward damnation?" Brennan followed, slower, his face stricken. He looked at the page and whispered, "The book is rewriting itself. The chains of language no longer hold. It is consuming his name to replace them." Caleb turned to Brennan, fury blazing. "Then strike him down. Let his blood seal it before it consumes us all." Brennan's voice broke. "You fool! His willing surrender is what it craves. If he gives freely, it escapes. If we force him, it devours." Their argument rose, sharp and bitter, echoing off the stone. Emily pressed closer to me, her nails digging into my sleeve. The voice came again, not from their mouths, not from the room, but from the page itself. "Robert." The letters writhed, rearranging into a face I knew. It was Sarah. My wife, who had died 5 years ago, stood before me in ink and shadow. Her eyes were soft, her lips trembling with the same smile I had held onto in dreams. "Robert," she whispered, "do you remember me?" My knees weakened. I reached out without thinking, my hand trembling. My shadow stretched farther than it should have, fingers grazing the page. Emily slapped my hand back. "It is not her," she cried. "Do not answer." The face dissolved, the ink dripping, reforming into the same endless letters of my name. Caleb snarled, his dagger gleaming. "He's already lost. Look at him. He sees what it shows. He believes. Kill him now before it is too late." Brennan stepped between us. His voice was desperate. "No, he still resists. As long as he resists, the prison holds. If he falls, if he gives, then it ends for all of us." I collapsed to the floor, clutching my head, the whispers flooding me, my name pounding like drums inside my skull. Emily held me, her arms tight, her voice shaking as she begged me not to speak. That night I dreamed of the book. I dreamed its pages spread wide, ink flowing like rivers, letters climbing the walls, spelling my name across the sky. I stood alone in the desert, and everywhere I looked, The sand was carved with the same word. Robert, I woke with blood in my mouth. My shadow leaned over me, watching with hollow eyes. The decision was made at dawn. Father Brennan gathered us in the mission hall, his face pale with exhaustion, his eyes ringed with darkness. He held his rosary so tightly the beads cut into his skin. He looked not like a priest, but like a man about to step into his own grave. "This cannot continue," he said. His voice cracked, but carried weight. "Rome has spoken. We attempt the rite tonight. Silver, salt, and blood will be used. The book must be subdued before the shadow spreads beyond these ruins." Brother Caleb Foster stood at his side, his jaw set, his eyes burning with zeal. "The rite is not enough," he said. "The boy is the key. His blood is the lock. Strike him down and the chain closes." Emily stepped forward. She was trembling but defiant. "You do not understand. Killing him will not save us. It will only feed it." Caleb glared at her as though she had blasphemed. "You defend the guilty. You defend the one who opened it." I wanted to speak, to protest, to defend myself. But my voice faltered. The truth was already carved in my heart. I had opened the book. I had read. The warning had been clear and I had broken it. Brennan silenced Caleb with a raised hand. "We will perform the rite. No more blood will be spilled unless it is demanded by God himself." That evening the hall was prepared. The windows were covered, the doors barred with heavy beams. Salt was scattered in circles across the stone floor, lines connecting to form symbols Brennan insisted would hold the darkness. Silver bowls were placed at each corner of the altar, filled with holy water. Candles lined the walls, their flames flickering nervously though there was no breeze. The book lay at the center of the altar. Its cover pulsed faintly, rising and falling like a chest breathing. The silver clasp glimmered, as though mocking us. Brennan stood before it, his hands raised, his voice low as he began to chant in Latin. His words were steady at first, each syllable sharp, deliberate. The candles flickered with each word, their flames bending toward him. Caleb circled the altar, dagger drawn, scripture etched into the blade. His lips moved silently, his eyes fixed on me more than the book. Emily stood near me, her hand gripping mine so tightly it hurt. Her eyes never left the book. The chanting grew louder. The flames rose. The air thickened, pressing against my lungs. My skin burned. Then the book shuddered. Its pages turned on their own, whipping back and forth in a frenzy. The ink bled from them, dripping to the altar, crawling across the stone like living veins. The salt lines hissed, blackening, burning away. Brennan's voice broke. He forced the chant louder, but the words warped, twisting backward. His mouth moved, but the sounds that came out were not his. They were layered, distorted, hundreds of voices speaking at once. Emily screamed. She pulled me back, but my feet would not move. My body was drawn forward toward the altar, toward the book that pulsed like a heart. "Robert," the voice shook the hall. The candles bent inward, their flames sucked into the book. The dagger in Caleb's hand glowed red. "Robert, give me your blood." Images exploded in my head. A world drowned in shadow, churches burning, crosses broken, faces screaming, my name carved across the sky. "No," I whispered, though my voice was lost in the roar. "No." The ink surged upward, forming shapes, hands, dozens of them dripping black, clawing at the air. They reached for me, their fingers stretching, their nails digging grooves into the altar. Brennan fell to his knees, blood running from his nose. "Hold the circle," he cried, though his voice was nearly gone. Caleb snarled and lunged forward, slashing at the hands with his dagger. Each cut spilled more ink, but the wounds only multiplied, the hands splitting into dozens more. The ink sprayed, sizzling against the stone. Emily pulled at me. You have to fight it. Do not answer. Do not let it win. But the voice pressed harder. Robert, you opened it. You are mine. Give me your blood, and I will be free. The words wrapped around my heart, squeezing. My knees buckled, my hands shook. I could feel the pull, the demand, the inevitability. Caleb turned on me then, fury blazing. Enough of this. He's already lost. He raised the dagger high and rushed at me. Emily screamed. Brennan tried to rise but collapsed. Caleb's blade slashed across my arm. Pain tore through me. Blood spilled. It struck the book. The cover absorbed it instantly. The leather darkened, veins spreading across the surface, pulsing faster, hungrier. The hall shook. The floor cracked. Shadows spilled from the book, crawling up the walls, blackening the ceiling. A hand larger than the rest rose from the pages, a colossal shape of dripping ink, its fingers curling, reaching toward me. I staggered back, clutching my bleeding arm. My blood had fed it. My blood had answered. No, I said, my voice broke. No, not like this. Emily's hands gripped my shoulders, her face white with terror. Robert, you have to stop it. You started this. You are the only one who can end it. Her words pierced through the roar, through the screams, through the pounding in my head. She was right. I had opened the book. I had read what should never be read. I had broken the one law carved into silver. This was mine to end. I stepped forward. The hand of ink loomed above me, dripping, ready to crush. The voice thundered. Robert, give me your blood, give it, and I will be free. I lifted my bleeding arm and pressed it to the cover, but not with surrender, with defiance. I opened you, I whispered. My voice shook, but did not break. I will close you. The book pulsed violently. The ink screamed, the hand convulsed, twisting, clawing at the air. The shadows shrieked, the hall split open, candles burst, flames snuffed out. Brennan collapsed, his rosary shattering. Caleb screamed as the shadows dragged him down, his dagger slipping from his grasp. Emily clung to me, sobbing, refusing to let go. I pressed harder, my blood soaked into the cover. The voice roared, furious, betrayed. You chain me with your flesh. You chain me with your will. Fool, you cannot hold me forever. The ink surged, then recoiled. The hand collapsed inward, sinking back into the pages. The shadows screamed, thrashing, then folded into the book. The cover slammed shut with a crack like thunder. Silence. The hall lay in ruin. The salt lines were gone. The stone floor was scorched. Brennan lay unconscious, his breathing shallow. Caleb was gone, his screams still echoing faintly. Emily clung to me, shaking. The book rested on the altar, silent, closed but warm beneath my hand. My blood still glistened on the leather, absorbed into it. My veins burned, my chest ached. I knew then that I had not destroyed it. I had only changed it. The chains were no longer silver. The chains were me. I whispered to Emily, though my voice was barely sound. I opened it. I had to be the one to close it. Her tears fell onto my arm. She said nothing. The silence pressed in, deeper than before. The book was closed. The hand was gone. But inside me, the whisper remained. Robert. It was patient. It was waiting. When the book closed, the sound echoed like thunder through the broken mission hall. The candles had been snuffed out, their smoke twisting into the rafters. The salt lines were erased, scorched black on the stone. The chains lay shattered, useless. I staggered back from the altar, my arm still bleeding, my veins burning. Emily clung to me, her tears wetting my sleeve. Father Brennan lay crumpled near the wall, his breathing shallow, his rosary shattered beside him. Brother Caleb Foster was gone, swallowed into the darkness, his screams still lingering faint in the corners of my memory. For a long moment there was silence. No chanting. No shadows, no roar. The book lay closed, its pale cover glistening with my blood. The warmth of it pulsed against the air. It was not destroyed, it was not contained, It was only changed. Emily whispered, her voice raw. "You stopped it." I shook my head slowly. My throat felt torn, my chest hollow. "I chained it again, but the chain is me." Her eyes widened, searching my face, looking for meaning. I did not explain further. I could not. We carried Brennan outside into the dawn. The desert light was sharp, almost cruel, spilling across the ruins. Birds returned at last, their calls thin, hesitant. The wind stirred the sand again, but it carried with it a stench of iron that clung to my tongue. Brennan awoke briefly, his voice ragged. "It is inside you now." His eyes met mine, glassy with pain. "You live, but not as you were." He gripped my wrist with surprising strength. "Do not falter, Robert. If you falter, it will walk free." Then his strength failed, and he sagged back into unconsciousness. We buried him that evening. His breath had never returned to normal. He slipped away quietly, rosary beads still tangled in his fingers. Emily wept openly. I stood silent, the desert wind tugging at my blood-stained sleeve. Caleb was never found. Perhaps he'd been dragged into the book. Perhaps he wandered into the desert. Perhaps he was gone in a way we could not understand. His dagger lay on the floor of the hall, blackened, its scripture burned away. That night, when the stars spread across the sky, I sat alone by the ruins. Emily stayed in her tent, too shaken to be near me. I did not blame her. She had seen what I had done, what I had become. The book lay beside me. Its cover no longer pulsed, but it was warm, fevered. My blood had sealed it, and through that blood the prison was now inside me. I could feel it in every heartbeat, every breath. The voice whispered, "Robert." Not a demand this time, not even a command, a reminder. "Robert." I pressed my palms to my ears, but it did not matter. The sound was not outside. It was within. Days passed. We packed the camp, left the ruins behind. Emily begged me to leave the book buried, to walk away, to let the desert cover it again. But I could not. It was bound to me. To abandon it would be to abandon myself. On the drive back through the empty highways, the voice never ceased. It spoke softly, patiently. Sometimes it used my name. Sometimes it used Sarah's voice, my wife long dead. Sometimes it spoke in Latin, syllables twisting in ways I did not understand. Always it whispered. Always it waited. Emily asked once, her voice trembling, "Do you hear it now?" I did not answer. My silence told her everything. When we returned to the city, I tried to live as I had before. I walked through streets filled with people, lights, noise, but the book pulsed in my bag and my blood burned in my veins. Shadows bent wrong around me. Lamps flickered when I passed. My reflection lagged in mirrors, moving slower than I did. At night, the whisper grew stronger. It filled my dreams, showing me visions of fire, of chains breaking, of cities sinking beneath smoke. I woke with blood in my mouth, my hands clawed into my sheets. I am not free. I am not untouched. I am the prison. I sit now in the dark, the book before me. Emily left weeks ago, unable to stay near me. She begged me to go to Rome, to beg for help, but I cannot. The Vatican would only bury me, seal me away with the book, lock me where no one could hear the truth. So I write this. I confess, I opened what should not be opened. I read what should not be read. I gave my blood, not to free it, but to hold it. The chain is me. But chains weaken, flesh rots, blood dries. Already the whisper grows louder. Already my shadow lags further behind. Already the lamps flicker more violently when I walk past. Sometimes when I speak, I hear another voice beneath mine. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I feel hands pressing against my ribs from inside. Brennan was right. I live, but not as I was. I do not know how long I can resist. Perhaps weeks, perhaps days, perhaps only hours. When I falter, when my will breaks, the book will open again. And when it opens, there will be no wall, no chain, no desert to contain it. I am telling you this because you must know. If you ever see a chest bound in silver, a plate carved with words of warning, a book bound in pale leather, do not touch it. Do not breathe near it. Do not let curiosity undo you as it undid me, because once it has your name, once the ink has written you into its margins, you are no longer yours. I am Robert Harlow. I was a scholar, a husband, a man of reason. Now I am a vessel, a shadow, a chain. I am the keeper of the book, and I do not know how much longer I can keep it closed.